Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Prashant Kokil, our guest for today's expert talk series for our monthly newsletter, Simply ESG. And Mr. Kokil has an experience of 37 years working as head corporate environment and climate change with Tata Power. His experience and insights promise to enrich our discussion today. And now I will welcome our today's host, Mr. Vikash Sarda, Director of Greenifit, climate finance and ESG advisory company with an objective to help organizations achieve sustainability in their businesses. Also, we have my colleague, Mr. Muhammad Hassan Khan, who's executive in climate advisory, Greenifit. So now over to you, Mr. Sharda.
Yeah, thanks, Priti, and thanks a lot, Mr. Prashant, for giving us the time to have this meeting. Because first of all, am I audible? Just want to
It's
confirm.
okay, perfectly fine.
Okay.
Are you recording the proceedings?
Yes.
I mean, we will just note down the key point. I think it is not
Okay.
like video recording per
Okay.
se,
I
but we
just
will note
asked. I
down.
just wanted to
Yeah.
know. That's all. Okay, no problem.
So, so Mr. Prashant, once again, thanks for joining in and sparing your time to have our, the first guest talk. I mean, while we have been
Oh,
trying to kind of, have this guest talk for the last 2-3 months, but somehow
okay.
either there was some problem from other side and then some problem on the other side we could not have. But after when Preeti said that she knows you, and then we felt
Yeah.
that we can have a really good discussion and get your insights with respect to the ESG aspect of the business practices, which is emerging as a very important I would say the aspect of the business now in the context of the climate change which the world is facing today.
Yes.
Okay, so as Preeti mentioned, so over the last 6-7 months, I mean, we have been publishing our monthly newsletter on the ESG. What we felt actually that in India there is hardly any, the journal or the newsletter which gives you very specific, the information with respect to ESG. Okay, that
Okay.
is when we thought that there is a need to have this monthly newsletter. We thought that the objective of this newsletter should not be just like give some the article of some particular the expert, etc. What we felt that this newsletter should create more value to our reader actually. Okay, therefore if you look at, I mean, I will ask the Preeti to probably share with you our past the newsletters.
Okay.
Okay, so what we have tried to do is that we have tried to capture only those information which we believe would really make good impact on the readers intelligence, and as well as their desire to work in this particular space. Okay, so it should really add value, so therefore we have included only such information. So we also felt that from now onward, if we can have some really the experience of a person like who can really speak about the ESG practices, how that is kind of inculcated in the companies, the business culture. I think we thought that that can also really add good value to our reader. So in that context, actually, we thought we will have this discussion. So,
Okay.
so my first thing would be, since you have been working in this space, and now Preeti said that you have huge amount of the experience actually in this space. So uh, I mean, if I have to start with, how do you see, say, the ESG evolving here in India, and then what do you think is the role of the company with respect to, say, the ESG being integrated in their core values and the core business practices?
Okay. I have worked with Tata Group, so
Yeah.
perhaps very few companies are having that long life.
Hmm.
And basically, that long life actually is the starting point of everything. Especially the sustainability angle for business
Hmm.
comes from that longevity. How can you perpetuate in different circumstances? And for that matter, you have to consider not only financial goals, but your ESG performance also. Now, ESG term per se has come later, but we have been doing things since long,
mm,
this aspect. So the formal declaration or formal constitution of some framework has come later, much later.
mm,
So that is something which, which answers your question, that if you have to sustain yourself,
mhm,
you have to perpetuate your business, and you have to be in this frame all the time.
mhm,
But you have to have your business run with ESG in your mind.
mm,
That is a forerunner, not a also ran thing. It is something which should drive your entire organization. Of course, making profit is not a taboo. It
mm,
is something which is, assumed to be the right thing for business, but do it in the right way by
mm,
following ESG principles. That is why it is so important.
mm,
Normally, it is seen that it is, extra cost.
mm,
But actually, if you really look at a positive approach for business enhancement, then
mm,
it pays for you. It does not have extra cost at all.
mm,
Now, what has happened is that earlier it was voluntary. People were not thinking going beyond compliance at all.
mm,
So, what is regulatory requirement? I will only do that.
mm,
And then some people realized that if we do something more than what is compliance requirement, then we have better market share, we have better opportunity for growth,
mhm,
and we have better possibility of going long way. And when one started doing it, automatically others also followed.
mm,
And there are many such groups and industries and a group of industries which are doing this for everyone. Obviously, all your knowledge cannot come from within.
mm,
You may be great at your business, but outside in perspective is also equally important. Now that is something where people hold back, and they don't try to inculcate the sustainable thinking as a policy to
mm.
start with.
Yeah, so I think I agree with you that many companies like the Tata groups and others, I mean, which has the credibility in the market when it really comes to the complying with the sustainability the requirement. They have been doing or following that practices for many decades rather. And then, as you rightly said, probably this term ESG has become very popular only in the last, you can say, 5 6 years 7 years. So completely agree with you, sir. I mean, while say the Tata groups has been say following, but how say the organizations they identify and prioritize these ESG issues actually, and those issues which are say relevant or material. I think the materiality aspect is also important when it comes to the ESG performance of the company. So
Absolutely, you are right. Materiality is the key actually.
yeah.
One materiality part, and other part is the risk assessment. See, these are the two drivers basically which will lead you to decide on what should be your priority and what should be your choice also for taking actions under ESG. So materiality is always a complicated thing because you need to have a balance. I can, you cite an example which I normally do,
Mm.
that a customer will always ask for the best quality at zero cost, which is
Right.
not possible,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is something which you have to have a balance, that I will give you best quality at the best price possible.
Mm-hmm.
So this kind of stakeholder demands when you do materiality assessment are supposed to be balanced out for your action.
Mm.
So your stand on materiality, what do you think is important for you
Mm.
as materiality, and what others think, other
Mm.
stakeholders think about your stand or your
Mm.
position, like carbon emissions and other things. So all those things, have to be balanced in a way that you have a definitive plan for execution, that I will address these issues
Mm.
in this manner.
Mm.
Obviously, your risk mitigation part comes in again. So that also becomes another input. And both together will decide your ESG action plan.
Okay. So, sir, now you know that while many companies have been practicing or following the sustainability principles, but of late, as you said rightly, that it has become mandatory now. Earlier, it was more of a
Yes.
voluntary thing. Now it has become mandatory. When it becomes mandatory, what really happens is that the government then introduces certain, the format, certain type of the template to be followed, so that the company's performance can be measured or compared on kind of the similar platforms actually. So
Yes.
that's what is the case. Okay, so when it comes to say the measurement of the ESG, which is an important aspect for any company to kind of mitigate the carbon emission, first thing they need to do is how much they are kind of emitting first, right? So
Yes.
that is the first required. So I think the regulators across the globe, I think they have taken the very nice step. First is to force the company, or at least insist the companies to come and disclose their the carbon emission or environment related performance, you can say, right? So when it comes to say your group, I mean, how do you measure or track the ESG effort? Is it same in terms of say BRSR format when it comes to India, or say outside India it is GRI or other kind of the reporting format or framework, etc.? So as a company, I mean, what is your systems in place, the process in place to kind of track and kind of measure your the ESG performances?
Okay. Let me tell you something that all these regulatory requirements came in much later.
Mm-hmm.
Voluntary participation was started way back in 2003 when GRI was not a standard by
Okay.
Tatas. So it was like, why not we be transparent enough to show that this is what is my status,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that is the starting point. And if you really look at the starting point, will always be collecting proper data and having a database. Where do you stand? So that is the starting point. Then on, if you continue just giving data points as a report, then it is of no use to you. It will not add value to your business. That's the challenge. So after a certain level of maturity for collecting all the data in a true manner and right way, you should put up self-driven targets. That this is where I need to be in this much of a time frame. So once you have that, then that will really lead to your ESG performance. Otherwise, there is no performance. You are doing your business. Whatever you emit is related to your business aspects, operations, etc. So it is like, business as usual, and you are reporting what you are doing. You should have interventions which are designed with an intent to achieve a certain correction. It may be increase or decrease depending on the parameter which you are looking at. Like, if you want to use more renewable energy, there will be increase in renewable energy. So do you have that focused action plan which is implemented religiously? Now here comes the resource and other part which management has to devote and try to start this process. Once that is done, once you get rolling, you will only find ways where your business is least affected from cost perspective, or it is offset in a relatively less time. The payback period is less, and you start doing those things.
Okay. So, sir, I mean, as you said, the one thing is to look at, say, the ESG related goals, which are sometimes, like much longer goals. It's the long
Yes.
term goals of the companies that I want to become net zero, say by 2030, 35, something like that. That is a more like a long term, right? So, but on say year to year basis, on yearly basis, whether the companies say where you are there, okay, so their ESG goals are also there, or say the key performance indicators against which they measure that, okay, I mean, on year also we need to do something.
Yeah, it was always there. See, it is self-set goal.
Hmm.
That is what we call. We don't, look at any standard or anything. That we take a challenging goal. We call it a smart goal, which is a stretch, manageable, but still it is difficult. It is not at, just do it kind of a thing. So you have a setting that, yeah, okay, you have to reduce 10% of your carbon emissions this year. So you start thinking, what do you really need to do? And then go on working on those kind of things and complete it. And your performance actually is assessed on the basis of extent to which the target is achieved. And obviously, since it is a stretch target, 80% of the time you will not achieve that target is anticipated. But your efforts are evaluated along with the results. Have you really worked hard on it to achieve it? And still you have not achieved it. Then it is something which you need to further enhance, get additional inputs, get additional support from external resources, etc. But basically, you have to have a self-set goal setting process. Unless you do that, you will not move from where you are.
Yeah.
All businesses have this compulsion that if you do not want to, you have to go on increasing your profit. For that, you need to, increase your production, sales, marketing, etc. So that means effectively, if your product output is going to increase, can you really reduce it in real terms on number basis or per production basis? That kind of prudent application you need to consider and then move ahead on self-set goals.
Yeah. Correct. Correct.
It's not necessary that you have to have a yearly goal. You can have yearly targets. Goal can be 3 years or more.
Yeah. Correct. Correct. Correct.
So, like you said, the net zero is like, government says 2050 or 2060.
Mm.
We take a target of 2040 internally or
Mm.
2030 internally and then work on it.
Mm. Mm. Completely, completely. Sir, now while say the ESG, I mean, slowly it is emerging as say the important aspect of every business. Okay, and in order to achieve the ESG goals, in order to achieve the ESG targets, the company, I think the company alone will find it very difficult to do that because the company works in the ecosystem, right?
Yes.
Where apart from the company, a lot of other players are also involved, which have to also contribute to the overall, say, the ESG performance of a particular company, right?
Yes.
So, therefore, the collaboration, with the significant players which can contribute to, say, the company's ESG performance also matters a lot,
Yes.
right? So when it comes to say the collaboration in kind of performing effectively in the ESG space, how do you see that, the collaborative approach? Because just I give you one example. So say for example in your waste management, right? So collaboration with say the waste recyclers, I think that becomes a very important part in the company's, the overall, say, the approach towards effective, say, the waste management, and also within the overall, say, the ESG space. Okay, so considering that, how do you see, say, the collaboration as an approach, and how company like yours, I mean, they have been kind of, working in that space?
Yeah, you are absolutely right. It's not one man show at all. It can't work that way. That's for sure. So you need to have collaboration and you need to have a definitive approach. Basically, I can disclose what we used to do is that we used to, define the area in which we want to work. And once that is decided, we will start looking for the initiatives and the partners both. What can be the initiatives and what who can be the partner for executing them? See, you can't have on board so many people in house who can drive this exclusively. The routine employees cannot be part of your sustainability drives with the society, the externalities.
Mm-hmm.
So you definitely need to have partners. So you have to choose the right ones who can, understand what is it that you are working for, and then drive it accordingly, right? So choosing the right partner is one thing, but at the same time, you should be clear enough that what we want to do, I want to do. So once you know that, then you know what are the desired results that I'm looking at. Then go in for indicators, both lead indicators as well as lag indicators. Track the performance, and then decide on whether to continue or modify or do course correction in your approach. That's the model of partnership.
Yeah, I think completely
That's
agree.
that's something which is very important. And
Mm.
second important thing is, when you are doing something, you have to decide what is my exit point.
Mm.
You cannot go on, perpetuating doing something
Mm.
indefinitely.
Mm. Mm.
Then it becomes charity.
Mm.
Then it is not
Yeah.
sustainability.
Correct, correct, correct. I
So
think
that is
many people get confused, with
correct.
CSR and ESG actually.
No, it is something. Yes, you are doing something for society that will be captured as part of ESG.
Mm.
But what you do is something is up to you, and
Mm.
then you have to take a call to do it right way.
Mm. Mm.
See, when you talk of results,
Mm.
there it matters. Otherwise, it is a CSR spend. That's all.
Mm. Mm. Right.
I have complied with my requirement as per Companies Act. That's the only, no, that's not the way. You
Mm.
have to have some positive impact which is, expected out of your spend.
Mm. Mm.
Whether you are getting it, that gets captured in ESG, not in CSR.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
So your
So what?
results come
Yeah.
in ESG.
Okay. So, what, in your opinion, are like say new emerging trends actually in ESG? Yes, we are seeing that even after say the SEBI mandated say the BRSR reporting for say the first 1,000 companies, then later on we have seen that within a year they have come out with the different, the requirement also. First they
Yes.
said 1,000 companies, then they said okay, the 250 companies. I mean they have to kind of also report their say the upstream, downstream, the value chain partners performance. Then they came out with the assurance part of it. Yes, the all what you're reporting it should be the assured, etc. Now most of the companies in India, or we can say specifically the export oriented companies, I mean they are part of the big global value chain, right? So anything happens outside of India also probably impacts them, right?
Yes.
So not only say the changes which are happening here domestically or say within India, I think the changes which are happening outside India also needs to be clearly tracked, right? Otherwise any particular change in a particular country can impact the companies here in India, right? So how do you see, I mean, the new changes emerging in the ESG space? What are the new things coming in your opinion which the businesses needs to be tracking actually?
Okay. First of all, yes, you said it very right. People may agree or disagree, but I feel that we are an international economy already.
Mhm.
Many of our small, medium, and large business houses are working on international markets. So, international influence has to be part of your consideration, either as risk or opportunity or a material impact.
Right.
So, anyway, it has to figure in into your strategy and policy.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, that's something which is imperative. There is
Hmm.
no choice about it. And that's the reason why many top companies, what they do is they prepare a single sustainability report, which gives you the connection between various aspects or various indicators as required under different models,
Hmm.
whether it is GRI, CDP. No, you don't keep on preparing different reports. Prepare one single report
Hmm.
which will give you information with connectivity to the different aspects which are desired to be disclosed.
Hmm. Hmm.
So if that is the latest.
Hmm.
See, if you really look at BRSR output, What is needed to be uploaded is a tick box.
Right.
But that's a fair enough effort by the regulator that at least everybody will report on the same thing in the same way.
Right.
So you can have benchmarking, peer comparison, everything you can do. That's something which is great, right? Instead of, pushing things in a definitive manner, they have kept it open as of today. Tomorrow there may be some inculcation of some, specific disclosures or something like that. But that's good if it comes after a certain basic maturity. And that's where, BRSR is a good starting point. BRSR does not call for specific action in a targeted manner, both time as well as results.
So, sir, how does your company deal with your value chain partners, because they are also important part of this ESG? So, do
Yes.
you also ask them to follow, say, same BRSR format, or you ask them to submit some information with respect to ESG performance, or something else? So, what exactly is the strategy in your organization when it comes to the ESG performance of your value chain partners?
See, let me tell you, vendors or your value chain partners
Hmm.
can be of different sizes,
Hmm.
and the affordability of different initiatives has to be taken into account before forcing something down their throat.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you have to make them understand that this is beneficial to you.
Hmm.
Then only there will be a buy-in. Otherwise, it will not happen. So you may think it funny, but the starting point is: do you ask your vendors and suppliers to be compliant in safety? Do you give them training? See, these are small things,
Hmm.
but they actually, help me in my performance because there are no accidents.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
See, I'm taking services from someone and I ask them, are you doing some safety training for your employees at your
Hmm.
end?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
See, I can always escape by saying that I have given them training as required for my job and get away.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I
But
have
that
done
is
my
not
role.
which is expected of a large
That's
company
that.
like the
See,
Tata
this is
Group.
this is the small way in which you
Yeah,
can start.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
See, you have to make them realize that this helps.
Hmm. Right. So, sir, what is also happening, in this entire ESG euphoria, when people are talking about this ESG, etc., the large focus continues to be on the environmental aspect, while the social and then the governance aspects are also equally important, right? So when it comes to really say the social aspect of the ESG performance, so how do you see that aspect in your company? I mean, because if you really go by say the BRSR reporting framework, so 4 5 things I think which comes out very clearly in the BRSR is that the companies are expected to really have the good gender diversity. Then
Yes.
second is the good the training and development programs on human rights, health and safety, the skill upgradation programs, etc. Then what are the companies doing with respect to giving the several the well-beings of the employees, whether it comes to say the accident insurance, health insurance, and several other benefits which are important for keeping these employees their health intact, and at the same time they can also contribute well to the company, right? So that those are the things. So how do you see those aspects in your companies, and then how your company deals with such requirements actually?
See, one thing is for sure, Tata Power or Tata Group rather,
Hmm.
both had always been positive on this aspect,
Hmm.
facilitating the employees
Hmm.
for their own growth and well-being. So, in fact, I can, now that I have superannuated, I can claim definitely that our salaries as compared to the peer may not be that great. But if you look at overall, the freedom as well as the opportunity for growth
Hmm.
and self development,
mm,
that is given.
mm,
That if you add on, which is a intangible benefit,
mm, mm,
then it becomes much higher as compared to others.
mm, mm,
So once people start realizing this,
mm,
they try to go into such such employers, go to such employers
mm,
and work there. That's the preference. So your turnover comes down,
mm,
employee turnover. So that's the benefit. It pays back.
mm,
It is if you really look at it, the extra efforts that you take on training,
mm,
making sensitizing people about their rights as well as this thing.
mm,
Sometimes people feel that it is something which is unnecessary thing. I am doing something to create trouble for my own operations.
mm, mm,
That's the approach. That's the first reaction
mm.
to doing all these things.
Okay.
Once you overcome that,
Mm,
then you realize that it is actually beneficial to you,
mm,
and then you could continue doing this.
mm. So, sir, what we are also finding, in the market, for many companies, they like ESG is like a very new thing for them.
Mm,
Okay, so
mm.
suddenly a requirement is coming for them to comply with, the ESG related, the norms, etc. So they find it very difficult to kind of do that because they really don't understand what is this ESG all about. Actually, for them it is like, the for the newborn baby, it is like ABC, right? So it is
Yes,
like that for them. Then suddenly they will start looking at how to really comply with all this because they have not institutionalized ESG, right?
yes,
Because the ESG is not only about, okay, taken some data from different departments and then simply reported in the format, etc., right? So now you company has to ensure that this reporting part also becomes the part of their daily business actually,
correct,
right? The certain department needs to be responsible when it comes to say water related, the performance. Some department has to be responsible for say waste related. Regularly there has to be a data sharing, and then finally there has to be a particular department which is made responsible for undertaking the entire the ESG performance and finally reporting it. So it requires whole the sets of different policies and the procedures to be established within the organization
correct,
actually, right? So then only the ESG has the meaning, otherwise the ESG has no meaning at all,
right.
right? So most of these companies, smaller, specifically MSMEs, actually they are facing such kind of problem. So what is your view when it comes to say these smaller companies? How do you see like they should be going about it actually?
Okay. Because actually, I'll just tell you, I'm not trying to promote myself, but
Yeah.
this is what I'm doing. I post my retirement as an
Oh, okay.
independent consultant. So,
Mm-hmm.
this is a very genuine problem.
Mm,
You can get fly-by-wire consultants who will
mm,
just give you some slapstick solutions and go away.
mm,
That really does not lead you to so to say a successful performance on ESG.
mm,
So that is where you need somebody who is really experienced and who can guide you, handhold you,
mm,
your team, and prepare your team who will own it and run it.
mm,
So it is not that I am having a perpetuating consultancy. That is something which is important to understand.
mm,
That in ESG you don't need a perpetual consultancy service.
mm,
What you really need is a consultant who will handhold you
mm.
and set you on a path where you can trade on your own.
Yeah, correct, correct, correct.
So that is something which it may be having a higher cost initially,
Mm,
but you are not having a repetitive cost at all.
correct, correct.
So it is worth that investment so that you become important. And here comes the main issue. What
Mm,
you talked of upstream and downstream.
mm,
So upstream becomes more important because there is somebody who is assessing you
mm,
and your performance
mm,
for deciding on ranking of suppliers.
mm, mm,
So if you have some investment in good consultancy,
mm,
you can definitely claim the stake at the top of the table,
mm,
being a preferred provider of
correct.
service or materials.
Mm, mm.
And this has happened. I have given consultancy to a few, not middle level, not big, having 2 or 3 units at different locations and supplying, items to automobile industries. Now, what Volvo and others ask for, Volkswagen, Volvo and others ask for, you can't get it unless you have that ingrained in your operations and practices. So this is something which I gave them, and they are finding it that it is easier for them to get registered and getting orders from international markets, simply because they qualify in the ranking process, and they do it through third party, their own third party.
Yeah.
They look at the published data.
Hmm.
If it is not available, they ask you to give that data.
Hmm.
If you are able to give, they assess
Hmm.
and then give you ranking.
Yeah, it is quite important now, considering if you look at the European market, where say this very stringent environment law has been kind of passed there, and
What
as per
see
that.
the important thing, Vikash, is that they have started accounting end to end,
Correct,
carbon accounting.
correct, correct.
So at least you should be able to produce a authentic carbon footprint for your product, whatever
Hmm.
it may be,
Hmm.
so that it can be included in the overall calculation for the parent company who is taking your part or service.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it becomes imperative, it becomes a must.
I think now the polluting performance of the companies while manufacturing their product, actually, that is going to cost them very heavily. I think probably they are not understanding now. I think when the importer there in US or UK or say European, the unions, I mean, when they have to start paying the carbon content in the product which is imported there, their
Correct.
cost is going to increase, right?
Yes.
So they are
Yes.
going to now measure the performance of these suppliers who are supplying to them in terms of their carbon emission,
Absolutely,
actually.
because they are asking for it.
Yeah,
That unless you give me this, I'm not going to buy.
correct.
It has come to that already.
Correct.
So
So,
next step obviously is that how are you going to reduce, isn't it?
yeah, correct. So in your company, what are the other mitigation measures like you are taking to reduce the carbon emission?
See, basically in power sector, we are a
Yeah.
regulated business.
Hmm.
So in a regulated business, the cost of everything that we do is passed through.
Hmm.
And we are decided, I mean, a fixed amount of a fixed percentage is decided as a profit.
Hmm.
So when you have that, only what regulator feels as essential can be passed through to the customer.
Hmm.
And so far, any initiative
Hmm.
which we had started to do as a research has not been allowed to be implemented for cost purposes, and that's why we are lagging behind. Research part we have done very well. We know where we stand, but when it comes to actual commercial execution, the cost is high, still high, and then it becomes a deterrent. There is a limit to what extent, when your profits are fixed, selling prices are fixed by somebody else, how much you can spend from your pocket, there is a limitation. And that's especially why power sector, though it is the most intense emitter, is not able to do anything.
Yeah, rightly, sir. I think nicely you have covered, I think, most of the things. But the last, the question from my side, not specific to your company, but how do you see, say, this, the carbon or say climate change related, the problem or the concern which most of the countries they are having, and when it comes to say the country like India, where the prime minister is also kind of voicing his concern about the climate change, and that India has also already declared say that it would like to become carbon neutral or say the net zero
Hmm.
by 2070 actually. And then he has kind of spoken about panchamrit, five different measures, and the country has also published its low carbon the development strategy.
Yes.
So how do you see your, what is your view with respect to say this strategy which India is actually adopting when it comes to kind of reducing the carbon emission?
I think we are, very fast moving towards something. See, what we talk of is only about the carbon. That is something which is measured and used in a multiple ways, both positive as well as negative way.
Mm-hmm.
And you have different quotients for them, so that justifying the footprint. The problem or challenge is that whatever may be your justification or a standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
the results are visible
Mm-hmm.
of climate change, right? And that's why Prime Minister is probably accepting that reduction is a must.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of justifying that India's per capita emission is so and so and all the that way, and you are at this, it's your past emissions that is causing climate change and all those arguments. He has never mentioned anything of that if you really look at.
Yeah, correct,
So
correct.
you have to move on, accept the current status and try to better it.
Mm-hmm.
And really speaking, if you look at the all actions which have been taken up or being initiated and pursued, they are giving you many tangible benefits. See, you go, relatively cost was higher for renewables. Now it has come down.
Correct.
It has its own demerits also.
Mm.
So it is leading you to energy security.
Mm.
So your dependence on oil imports, if it comes down because of your, renewable efforts,
Yeah.
it's good for us,
Mm.
isn't it?
Correct, correct, correct. Completely.
So then second thing, people say why EV is also equally bad and all those
Mm.
things.
Mm.
Well, let us see it this way. No? If you have a EV, what you use is electricity.
Yeah. Correct.
It is generated somewhere.
Mm.
Even if it is a dirty source,
Mm.
that source can be controlled in a better manner than your normal IC engine vehicle.
Mm. Mm.
You have, really speaking, except the BS standard, no control on your emissions.
Correct.
Whereas the same fuel, if you use in a coal-fired or other fired power station, you can have better control measures.
Yeah, completely agree. Completely agree,
So
sir.
this kind of propagation or thought enhancement has never happened in India before. You have to compare apple to apple, not apple to oranges.
Yeah, correct, correct. I think the world is changing very fast, and the
Yeah.
kind of the challenges which we are facing probably we have not faced in the past, right?
Yes.
Therefore, the measures also the solution also will be very different from probably what we have not seen in the past. That is my
Correct.
you know
Yes. And it
thought.
will give results. It's not that we don't want to do it. It's not that we want to create, transformation without considering the social aspects.
Hmm.
So I don't know whether you have heard of it or you might have heard of it, but there is a just transition action which is going on, where social impact of moving away or doing away with something is all considered beforehand,
Hmm.
before deciding policies on the same.
Hmm.
So now this is something which we need to do.
Yeah,
In
correct.
fact, I was involved in one of the consultancies where one of the old units
Hmm.
in UP for power generation
Hmm.
was studied for repurposing.
Acha.
What can I do best with this unit?
Hmm.
So this is something which this kind of process is already in place, and it is driven by both national as well as international backing. It's a joint effort. So state electricity board along with government of UP and Asian Development Bank is had taken up this project. So now it will go to piloting phase and then it will be deployed elsewhere also, replication all over India. So these kind of things are happening. Perhaps it's too early to propagate that or just show off that we are doing something. It's not meant for that. It's meant for actually implementing something off the ground. So those efforts are already on, and I think we have good future. And the trade which is anticipated, by creating market is also good enough. So there are going to be multiple opportunities for the ESG sector.
Okay, sir. So I think, sir, most of the things we have discussed, all the I think the
Yes.
important points, I think we have discussed so far. I'll just ask my other colleagues, the Preeti and Hassan, if they have anything to kind of speak about. I think they can speak. Preeti and Hassan, you have anything to ask, Mr.
So,
Prashant?
so it was already a very enriching, experience listening to you too. So for now, I don't have anything to ask. It was a wonderful session. I think we discussed many points which were related to this ESG and sustainability, and it was. Yeah, it was a good experience. So, from my side, there is no more questions or any discussion points. Thank you.
Hassan,
Yeah,
I think some problem in his. So okay, leave it. So what we are going to do is that based on this discussion, we'll prepare all these discussion points in the form of it's more like how we conduct interviews
A
and what is
dialogue,
a
basically.
dialogue kind of thing, and we will share also that with you.
Okay.
Once you see that yes, it is fine that we can write all this based on your consent, we will then put it in our newsletter and then publish it, and we'll also share
Okay.
that.
Yes. Sure.
Okay.
Hope I have met your expectations.
Yeah, no, no, yeah, certainly, certainly. I think your substantial amount of experience was very clearly visible actually in that discussion. I think which has come out very, very clearly.
I have been in this since long. It's
No,
almost 40 years now.
it is coming out. Yeah, what you are
37
speaking.
is with Tatas, and rest is on my own now.
Okay, okay. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Thank you
much for
very
your
much. Yeah.
time.
Bye.
Thanks a
Bye.
lot.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Priti.
Priti.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Hassan.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so much,
Mohammed.
sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, bye, sir. Thank you.